Joe Smith Jr. versus Maxim Vlasov. This is our post-fight reaction discussion. I'm a little bit late on this one. Not a night of huge, glamorous fights, but a lot of sort of, more subpar fights that happened today. Nonetheless, very exciting stuff. Joe Smith Jr. versus Maxim Vlasov. You had Jaron Ennis versus Sergey Lipinets. In the UFC, you had Marvin Vettori taking on Kevin Holland. All great fights, but this, I really kind of wanted to concentrate on the Joe Smith versus Maxim Vlasov fight, you guys, because, wow. I mean, what a fight. An incredible fight, first and foremost. Just an absolutely incredible fight. A war from beginning to end. But right off the top of the bat, man, I gotta say, Joe Smith Jr. saw the path of most resistance and went right after it. I mean, I believe Joe Smith Jr. made this fight so much harder for himself than he had to. I mean, this guy, again, he chose the path of most resistance. What do I mean? Well, this guy, Maxim Vlasov, I think he was trying to sort of employ the Dmitry Bivol strategy to beat Joe Smith. Move around, box, be slick. And it worked. It worked, At the end of the day, it ended up being a real close decision. One judge had it a draw. But it ended up being a real close win for Joe Smith. But, this guy, Maxim Vlasov's strategy worked, man. Moving, shaking and baking. And if you would have given the decision to Vlasov, I don't think a lot of people would have argued with you. I mean, I did think Joe Smith Jr., again, looking at the criteria for scoring, you want to give more points to the guy that's landing the shots that are most effective, right? That are most likely to bring out the end of the fight. So I will say Joe Smith Jr., I think deserved to win, but man, by the skin of his teeth, man. And even Andre Ward had it a draw, man. So let's kind of get back to Vlasov, what Vlasov did, man. Vlasov was moving around, again, employing the Dmitry Bivol strategy. Of course, not as skilled as Bivol, nowhere near the footwork, but had good upper body movement, was moving around well, and landing a lot of shots on Joe Smith, who from the very beginning of the fight was doing nothing but winging shots. I mean, there was no boxing here at all. This was a tough man contest for Joe Smith Jr., who by, the middle of the fight, I would say between the 7th and the 9th rounds, looked like he was starting to get exhausted. Because I don't care who you are. If you're in a fight in professional boxing and you're winging shots with all your might, right? You're going to get tired. And I felt like Maxim Vlasov's strategy of just landing, 60, 70% shots, staying in Smith's face, pat, landing these little shots, it was working. And then, unfortunately for Vlasov, in between those little shots, sometimes he'd get cracked by a big shot by Joe Smith Jr., catch the attention of the judges, and so it would kind of stay in favor of Joe Smith. But, I mean, had Joe Smith Jr. come out, maybe jabbed a little bit, jabbed to the body, right? Jab to the head, jab to the body, and rip shots to the body, right from the outset of this fight, in my opinion. Again, I'm not a coach or anything. I'm just a promoter. I'm a lawyer. I don't know anything as far as coaching or fighting, really. I mean, I spar once in a while. I train a little bit, but I'm not a fighter by any means. But, having spoken to so many coaches, watched so many fights, this is what I'm seeing. It's when a guy's moving around like that, you got to slow him down. And if you're winging your heaviest shots at his head, which is constantly on the move, and you're missing and you're tiring yourself out, man, you got to go to plan B at some point and go after the body to try to slow the guy down, right? Because, if you can slow the guy down, then you can pick him apart. I mean, Joe Smith, the few times in this fight that he did go to the body, he really seemed to hurt Maxim Vlasov. So I predicted a win for Joe Smith. I thought Smith was going to stop this guy. He didn't. He didn't. I knew this guy was going to be tough. He'd been in there with Zurdo Ramirez. He'd been in there with a few tough guys. He doesn't go down easy. But again, Joe Smith Jr., an absolutely brutal power puncher. He just couldn't connect. He couldn't connect because he picked the stupidest strategy he could pick against this guy. And he almost gave the fight away, man. If Joe Smith Jr. would have lost this fight tonight, the entire time, I was thinking about it. And there were points during this fight where I thought he was going to get stopped. But if Joe Smith Jr., and I'm talking, because he looked off balance and uneasy with some of the shots he was taking, even though, again, Vlasov wasn't landing 100%. If Joe Smith Jr. would have lost this fight tonight, you guys, he would have been, and this is heartbreaking coming from a kid born and raised in Miami, he would have been the Dan Marino. This guy would have been the Dan Marino of boxing, having been, good enough to challenge for a title over and over again, but never have won. It was really close. He ended up winning. I think, again, one judge had it a draw. The other had it 115. I want to say 115, 114. Or 115, 113. And then the other one had it 115, 112. I thought, the scores were pretty fair. I was prepared for something extreme. You know how ridiculous boxing is. I was prepared for like a 118, 110, something silly. But I thought they got it right. There was other fishy shit that went down on the card. I have a guy I respect very much in Coach Derek Collinsworth, the man behind Soap Boxing Podcast from Houston. Definitely check him out. There was some fishy shit that went on here, and he made a video about it already, talking about Tommy Morrison's son being on the same card and how his gloves didn't have any duct tape on them, which is obviously a sign that the commission, sealed the gloves and made sure they were all okay. And the way his opponent, hurt him and then approached the ref aggressively and, wasn't disqualified. And, it was just a really, really odd situation, that Trey Morrison fight. And, look, this event did happen. This event did happen on an Indian reservation, I believe, at a casino, perhaps on tribal land. Usually that's what happens. And so, you don't really need a state athletic commission for that. That's the reason a lot of promoters, they go after these casinos on these Indian reservations, because they don't need to involve the casino. They can kind of do whatever they want, get away with whatever they want. So I thought there was some fishy stuff. But, beyond that, beyond the fishy stuff, I actually thought that the scores were okay. Wherever these judges came from, whether they were from an actual commission or maybe the reservation has its own commission, I thought they got it right in this fight, giving Smith the very slight win. I could see it also the way, that judge had it as a draw. Andre Ward had it that way as well. Obviously one of the best to ever do it, not only in fighting, but in commentating. I just thought it was a very close fight. I thought the judges did a good job. But, man, I thought Joe Smith really messed up tonight. Listen, if this Joe Smith goes up against a Beterbiev that's even as bad as the Beterbiev we saw in his last fight against Dennis or whatever the guy's name was, this Joe Smith gets smoked. You do not play this game with Beterbiev. And, Smith's already lost to Dmitry Bivol, the other light heavyweight champion. So this would have been a really bad night versus Bivol. If he would have fought like this against Bivol, I think Bivol would have stopped him. That's my opinion. And obviously Beterbiev would have stopped him. The thing is, Beterbiev's style is a little bit different. He doesn't move like that. He doesn't move the way Vlasov was moving. He comes for you. He's technical, but he comes for you. It's like an intelligent aggression. But, if he fought like this against Beterbiev or Bivol, he would have gotten stopped. And I think this was a big wake-up call for him. Maybe it's inactivity. I don't know what happened tonight. Another thing, Coach Derek pointed out to me was that, he wasn't punching anything beforehand in the locker room. He felt like he should have been warming up. You gotta listen to what these coaches are saying. I mean, they know what they're talking about, and I do agree. I agree with Coach Derek. I think Smith's corner is limiting him. I do think Smith's corner is limiting him. I mean, I don't know. I don't really know that much about these guys, but what I do know is Joe Smith Jr. physically is just a specimen. I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. How many people are built like Joe Smith Jr.? I don't know if you guys noticed this. The guy looks like he's got an 80-inch reach. I mean, I mentioned it in my prediction where I said, I thought he was going to win. The guy's built like a fucking pterodactyl. I mean, the guy could, fly over the city and terrify people, and he's totally shredded, and he's got ridiculous work ethic, a blue collar guy. He's a guy who's got basically the technique of a guy in a tough man contest, but he's just so special physically. He's just so special physically that he was able to win a championship against a guy, from Russia with an amateur pedigree and, a guy who deserved to be there, and a very tough Russian guy as well. But, it speaks to not only how special Joe Smith Jr. is physically, but how limited his corner is. I mean, a little bit of advice. Go to the body. And, I'll give them credit. At one point, they did say, rip shots to the body, but you got to be able to convince your fighter. You got to go to the body. This guy's head, you can't touch this guy's head. I mean, I can't tell you how many times Joe Smith Jr. swung, full strength, just swinging, right, with everything he had, and completely missed. Maxim Vlasov. Go to the damn body. It was driving me crazy. And then what compounded the craziness for me was every time he would go to the body and land, it looked like it made a difference. And then he would just get away from it again, and they would go back to rock'em sock'em robots. I mean, very frustrating situation. It was crazy. Let's see what's going on in the chat, guys. Before I continue, hit the subscribe button, the bell notification icon next to it. Join the channel. Join Knucklehead Nation. Help me build not only this channel, but the only kickboxing promotion that matters, man. We'll be back soon. It looks like California's open up. Be sure also to like the video if you haven't. That helps, I guess, with the YouTube algorithm. Also, get your FightersRep gear in the link below. Anything you guys purchase, it's basically most of it or all of it is reinvested right back into the channel and the promotion. And shout out to our official sponsor, Nueva Real Estate. Reach out to them for all your California real estate needs. Let's see what's going on in the chat. JC Desmond says, I don't agree at all. I'm just kidding. I'm going to be in Cali in 3 weeks, bro. We have to link up. For sure, maybe we'll go get some tacos or something, brother. It would be good to see you out here. Dan the Mag says, you should link up with IBFP. You guys are knowledgeable. I appreciate that, Dan. I'll reach out to him. Listen, I don't have an ego like a lot of these people, man. I'm secure in myself, So I'll reach out to him if he wants to work. Together we'll work. If not, then, what can I do? I've reached out to a couple different channels. To be honest with you, I've never heard anything back from anybody. I think they think they're too cool or whatever. I don't know. Wendy Tapia says, why the hat? Well, Wendy, sometimes you got to be a little bit different, right? And sometimes you also have to pay homage to the ancestors. And that's what I'm doing with this hat. I do have a background from the Middle East. And so this is actually the kind of thing my grandparents wore. And, I'm happy to pay homage to them while also adding a little bit of, flavor, I guess you could say, to the channel. We don't want to be the same as everybody else. And born. JC Desmond says, built like a pterodactyl. I love it. Bro, you got it. I mean, I'm not really one to talk because, I've got like a 90-inch reach. I'm fucking chimpanzee and, my hands are like, look at these things. I mean, I had friends on the basketball team that were like 6'7", and my hands were bigger than theirs. But, But you know what I mean. The guy's a freak. I mean, the guy, he's a knuckle dragger. You know what I mean? Coach Derek actually told me tonight, he said, man, if you give me an Irish kid with that kind of build, I'll go to the moon with him. And I think that's pretty funny, and I agree. Sly Tendency says, player from the Himalayas. What's going on, brother? He says, I like that interview you did with Quick Draw. Looking forward to seeing him. Crazy day of fighting. Be careful, IBFP. He just screams and overtalks. Anyway, to be honest, I don't know who the guy is, but I'll check him out. I'll take your words for it. I just don't know who the guy is. But I'm always down to talk boxing with anybody, combat sports, whatever. We love this shit. I also wanted to talk real quick to you guys about Jaron Ennis versus Sergey Lipinets, man. What a brutal finish by Ennis, in the 6th round. Just absolutely destroyed Sergey Lipinets. He did get hit a lot to the body, I felt. But, when you swim, you get wet. And when you box, you get punched. And, man, just destroyed Lipinets in that 6th round. Nasty shot. The referee didn't even bother counting. I mean, just waved it off. Great performance by Jaron Ennis, man. He looks good. Did you watch Boots fight? Yep, that's exactly what we're talking about right now. If Ortiz were to fight Boots today, who you got? Oof. That's a tough one. I would probably go towards Ortiz a little bit. I'd probably go towards Ortiz because I think Ortiz has had better experience. I think Ortiz, has fought better competition. They're both fast. They both hit hard. I think Ortiz might be a bit more fundamentally sound. I think Ennis is more flashy, But I think Ortiz might be like a little bit safer, keeps his hands up. I don't think the way Ennis fought against Lipinets is a very smart way to fight against a guy like Virgil Ortiz. But you never know. I mean, Ennis has, great speed, big power. He could always catch Ortiz with something on the way in. I think it'd be a great fight. But I would favor Ortiz right now until Ennis gets some better experience. I don't know if you guys saw Conor Benn. Today either, man. He looked fantastic today, you guys. I mean, Conor Benn just looked absolutely nasty. Got Samuel Vargas out of there in 1 minute and 22 seconds. We did a video about that earlier in the day. Just looked impressive, man. So, yeah, a lot of great-looking fighters, man. A lot of great-looking fighters out there in that welterweight division or whatever. And great day of fights. Great day for fight fans. We had the Lipinets Ennis card. We had the Pterodactyl Joe Smith Jr. versus Vlasov. We had the UFC card, and Conor Benn fought. Man, I really enjoy all those matchroom boxing cards, man. I feel like I'm more of a British boxing fan than I am an American boxing fan at this point, as weird as that sounds. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I've got for you guys, man. I appreciate you guys joining me. I just wanted to get on and talk about this really quick, man. I thought Joe Smith Jr., man, really did himself a disservice today. I mean, congrats to him. He finally became a champion. I was extremely happy for him. You could tell him and his corner were very emotional about it. This was like, their 3rd time, I believe, trying to go after a title, and the first time they were actually successful getting it. But, man, wow. I mean, he put himself through the grinder for this one. He put himself through the wood chipper this one. And as a guy who stumps trees and works construction, he'll appreciate that analogy. So anyway, knuckleheads, that's all we've got. Hit the subscribe button. Join the channel. We put out content almost every day at 7 p.m. Pacific. Be sure.